What's going on, everybody? C4, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are here continuing our 2023 NFL Draft Breakdown Series. We're going by positional group and talking about the Philadelphia Eagles in relation to our draft picks as to what prospects make sense. We finished the offense last week, so go check out all those videos. Talk about quarterback, running back, receivers, which is wide receivers and tight ends, and offensive linemen. Today, we're going to start at defensive tackle. In particular, I want to focus on just D tackle. We'll have another video that's like the edge rushers because the Howie Roseman mantra, right? Build through the trenches. You might look at the Philadelphia Eagles right now and be like, well, we got Fletcher Cox back. Jordan Davis was our first-round pick last year. We're expecting big things out of Milton Williams, and I think Milton Williams is getting slept on. I know I kind of clowned on this pick when we made it, but we always knew he was an athlete, and I think Milton Williams is getting incredibly disrespected right now. I also think Marlon Tuipulotu is solid. I think for like a backup run-stuffing D tackle, he's more than capable to kind of fill that role. But there's still the Howie Roseman effect during the draft, where it's like you almost need to have a clear and obvious not offensive line or defensive tackle for him to not make that pick in the first round. So we're going to highlight some of the defensive tackles, and it starts with the big one. And this is almost like, you know, we're going to have to trolley trade for him. There's dream scenarios, dream situations where he's available. But likely, if we want Jalen Carter, who on tape could be the best pound-for-pound player in this year's draft class. My pro comparison for him was Ndamukong Suh. Peak, prime Ndamukong Suh. Not nearly as dominant. Ndamukong Suh is probably the most dominant defensive player I've ever seen since I've been watching college football. But the ceiling is very similar. Obviously, there's off-the-field issues with Jalen Carter. We're not going to go into that here today. I do think that the Eagles having Nakobe Dean, who is the leader of that Georgia Bulldogs defense 2 year ago, which Jalen Carter was a part of. I do think having Jordan Davis, who the connection there with Jalen Carter, they were teammates. They were the 1-2 punch that made the Georgia defense so S-tier. I think that is definitely favoring the Philadelphia Eagles as far as how far Jalen Carter could fall. We're going to have that inside information. He is first-team All-American, first-team SEC, 7 TFLs, 3 sacks last season. Didn't test, didn't get the measurables. I'm assuming, and I think it's fair to assume, much like every top-tier Georgia prospect, it would have been freakishly impressive. You know, you watch the tape, his burst is incredible. His power is ridiculous. He's the power of a nose tackle, but he's 314 pounds. I think you can't block him. He's one of those guys that's like, you know, if you say he's unblockable, you would expect more production than 3 sacks. But, like, he's unblockable to a man, unless you're double-teaming him. And, like, the fact that I think he's going to be able to carry that as a rookie. You are not going to be able to expect any guard, any center. You're going to have to double-team him. And when you bring that type of value on itself, which when we're assuming that we're going to have Jordan Davis take another step, and Jordan Davis needs to get double-teamed, right? It just opens things. Like, I'm about Jalen Carter. I'm not. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got like 10 D tackles we're going to break down here today. I'm not about drafting a D tackle this year. It's not a particularly strong defensive tackle class. But if we are, I'm all about Jalen Carter. I'm all about, if Jalen Carter is still there at 8, jumping some teams to secure his service. Do what we did last year where we had to jump ahead of the Baltimore Ravens to get Jordan Davis. Do that again this year to get Jalen Carter. As long as the off the field, which Philly's going to have all that extra information. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis have been grilled and put in goddamn interrogation rooms trying to get extra information on this guy. And Jalen Carter has had an official visit with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a D tackle. If we're not getting him, I would wait till almost day 3 to get our defensive tackle, because I think I'm fine right now going in with Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, and Milton Williams, with Marlon Tuipulotu as that D tackle 4. But if we are going to get a D tackle, it better be a blue chip one, and that would be Jalen Carter. Let me know. Would you guys trade up for Jalen Carter? I think a lot of the consensus amongst the Philadelphia Eagle fans for the draft is that if Jalen Carter's there at 10, you're taking Jalen Carter at 10. But would you trade up for Jalen Carter knowing the off-the-field issues? Knowing that, yes, you know, he did not have the best pro day, kind of showed up out of shape, but I do think I'm going to give him a little bit of, you know, wiggle room because of the off-the-field shit that he was dealing with. But still, you know, there's a lot of question marks. Because if there was no question marks, he's likely the first non-quarterback taken this year. So another big name at the defensive tackle spot is Brian Breezy from Clemson. I do like him, but I do feel like what he would be able to bring the Philadelphia Eagles at the price. If he's still somehow there at pick 30, sure, but it's much more reasonable that you would assume we'd have to get him at pick 10, or if we traded down from pick 10 into the teens, that is where he would fall. This is a guy who, as a true freshman, looked like a lock to be a top 5 pick, but has gone through some injuries. I believe it was an ACL, and is off the field. Like, his sister had passed away of cancer. It was brutal. Like, that's one of those things I hate. I absolutely hate watching, like, pre-games and shit, because, like, that's what they're focusing on. But obviously there's a story there and stuff like that. And I mean, you're pulling for this guy. Going from S tier recruit. Like, he was one of those guys, like, his high school montages were getting, like, millions of hits because it was ridiculous how good he was. He's one of those guys that if you had to put the bubble of guys that I don't necessarily want at 10, but if we reached at 10, I'd be fine with. Like, I probably would put Brian Breezy, because I do think what he would represent for the 3 technique on our squad, he could be our long-term successor for Fletcher Cox. Good interior pass rusher, needs to get a little bit stronger against the run. But this is a guy it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where his value is, because tested very well, tested like an S-tier recruit, 9.6 RAS, elite in the speed, elite in the agility. It's just, as it relates to the Philadelphia Eagles, would I rather give Milton Williams more reps? Like, what's the difference between Milton Williams and Brian Breezy right now at this point? I don't necessarily know. I guess I don't have a comfortable vibe on where Milton Williams' ceiling is. But in terms of athletic player, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if Brian Breezy is a needle mover enough for this Eagles defense. Let's just wrap it up here. The consensus of drafting Brian Breezy, when we'd have to draft him, which would be high in the first round, is that he's a long-term pick. He's not a guy that's going to be expected to contribute right away. And I'm just firmly in the camp of, with that first round pick. At 30, sure. 30 can be our developmental guy. But whoever we get at 10, or if we trade down from 10, we trade up from 10, they need to help this team get back to the Super Bowl this season. I don't know if Brian Breezy does that, unless there's like an injury or something like that along the defensive line. But I do like the player, and if somehow, some way, like Dane Brugler has the number 23 overall player, if that's the range, if he still falls a little bit and he's there at 30, by all means, Howie Roseman, appease your build the trenches mentality. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a comparison here, because the next 2 players are very similar. We have Kalijah Kancey, who everyone's talking about the ridiculous. He'd be a 3 technique, probably flex out to defensive end, how literally we used and have used Milton Williams. He's a guy that, like, his arm length, there's no one that's ever had that lack of length that has really had any success in the NFL. But he's kind of in that mold of like the super undersized 3 tech that you could probably flex out to defensive end. Same goes for this guy, Tahj Adabaware, who at 282 pounds shocked the world, running a 4.49. It's absurd. Just a ridiculous athlete, right? Both these guys would be the Milton Williams of the defense. Here's my argument. I'm not saying that these are bad players. I'm not saying anything. There's rumors that Howie Roseman likes Adabaware. I wouldn't be surprised if Howie Roseman. But why don't we just give Milton Williams a shot? Because, like, you're looking at Kalijah Kancey. He had 14.5 TFLs, 7.5 sacks last year. You're looking at Adabaware, who had 9 TFLs, 5 sacks last year. So, like, none of these guys are, like, ridiculous S-tier production from the position. These are guys that, like, were niche pass rushers in college, and they're going to be niche pass rushers at the next level. That production alone, is it enough to move the needle? Don't think so. Is it enough to show some respect to how freaky Milton Williams is, and to give Milton Williams just more of an involvement on the defensive line? We already have him under contract. We wouldn't have to invest in a first-round pick. Looking at Kalijah Kancey right here, 9.6 RAS. You compare that to Milton Williams. Milton Williams was just absurd as a defensive end. Now, if we want to compare them as defensive tackles, it's going to be a little bit more in line. I don't know why I didn't do it there. But Kalijah Kancey, athletically speaking, Milton Williams is in the ballpark. You want another comparison? Look at this guy, Adabaware. For what they're going to be inside out, it's fair to classify them as defense. They're pass rushers, and you're going to get more of that as a defensive end. Same kind of deal again as Milton Williams. Yes, 4.67 to 4.49, but like you're not going to have these guys run in a straight line. You want to use this to measure the explosiveness, and for the most part, Milton Williams is like the same area code of athlete as Adabaware and Kalijah Kancey. So on the side of like, do we draft these defensive tackles? I'm just on the use what we have right now. Use that pick somewhere else and give Milton Williams more of an opportunity in the offense. Because outside of the fact that I just think generally, as a player, Milton Williams showed flashes that last year, enough flashes to warrant an uptick in playing time. Because, I mean, Fletcher Cox is not getting any younger. I'm assuming that's going to be the rotation there. Ideally, it's going to be Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis as D-tackle 1, D-tackle 2, different skill sets. And then when Fletch gets rotated out, Milton Williams is going to be the guy that subs in. I'd rather just more Milton Williams than investing a likely for Adabaware and Kansas pick 30 and bringing them in. So that's kind of my defense of that. Now we're looking at more so depth behind Jordan Davis. Couple run stuffers in this year's draft. We have Mozzy Smith from Michigan, who was number 1, actually, on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He releases on The Athletic. If you're subscribed to The Athletic, you haven't seen it. He basically breaks down the top 100 freak athletes in college football every year, and Mozzy Smith was number 1. Fortunately, didn't really test like that. Didn't really test a lot. Kind of, making you work to break down how good of an athlete. Obviously, the bench press looks pretty good, but generally speaking, you're assuming that there's a lot of athletic upside here with Mozzy Smith, but he's a run defender. He doesn't have a whole lot of pass rush moves, and he's likely going to go in the second round. Like, now you're going, would you invest a second-round pick in Jordan Davis' backup right now? I think Marlon Tuipulotu is more than serviceable enough as a run stuffer. You can always use more depth, but then I'm almost in the side of, like, versus, a second-round pick here, we were fine by bringing Linval Joseph and Ndamukong off the street, like, mid-season to come in and fill that run-stuffing role. So, I'm not against drafting run stuffers, but if we were to view the addition of a run stuffer as a need, I would look at Ika from Baylor. He's not going to cost nearly as much. I think you're probably talking about a guy that's going to go day 3 for sure. I don't know, 4th round, somewhere in that range. He's very good, very maybe not a high ceiling, but he's going to be able to guy right now that easily can come and compete for defensive tackle 4 spot. If you get that in the 4th round, you need to consider that for the Philadelphia Eagles if we are in the business of acquiring draft pick. I'd rather Ika at his round versus overpaying for Mozzy Smith because it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Other defensive tackles that need to get talked about. Some Florida Gator bias here. Javon Dexter, great athlete at defensive tackle. I think a guy that I liked a lot more before he proved how good of an athlete he was, former 5-star recruit. Because now he's likely going to go above the range. Like, he's projected right now to go 2nd round, 3rd round, somewhere in that range. Whereas before he tested, he was more, in line with like an early day 3 selection. And as a Florida Gator fan, he's been, when he's on, he's on. He's been our biggest defensive recruit that I can remember in recent memory and was usually fairly solid on a very bad Florida Gator defense. So athletically speaking, I believe we've shown some interest in him as well. Howie Roseman, as a former Gator himself, always does his homework on his Florida Gators. I think Dexter would be interesting, but again, I don't necessarily know for what value he would bring to the defensive line, how much of an investment it would be to draft him early. Like, I'm not a fan of what he would bring to the team if Philly had to draft him in the 2nd round. But I do like the player. I think there's a lot of upside there. I think he's getting slept on a little bit. Another defensive tackle that's legit is Keanu Ben from Wisconsin. But I mean, he's again another guy that's just the stock's gone up, especially because there's so many 3 techniques, so many undersized defensive tackles this year's draft class. When you're like a legit D tackle, like the Javon Dexter, like the Keanu Ben, there's almost added value because there's not a lot of players built like him that can play everywhere at defensive tackle. Can do it all. Can rush the passer, can affect the run game, and that's exactly what you get with Keanu Benton. Big time power. Didn't test on the bench, but he's a powerful guy, and you just get more of a well-rounded defensive tackle. So much like Dexter, though, he's probably going to be a 2nd round pick. Could be a 3rd round pick. That's a significant investment for the Philadelphia Eagles when you have other needs. You have a lot of other needs. So the 2 value picks, that's what I kind of want to round this one out at. If we're not getting ST, if we're not getting Jalen Carter, my preference would be to get day 3 defensive tackles that can come in and be role players. So the first one up is Zach Pickens from South Carolina, former 5-star recruit, tested very well. And he's a guy that, production-wise, never lived up to it. He was ridiculous recruit. I think he was the number 1 defensive tackle from his recruiting class 2018. But you got great athleticism, and while the production, he has 11.5 TFL, 7.5 sacks in his career at South Carolina. These are the guys I like gambling on. Into day 3 right now, he's projected to go 3rd, 4th round. If we get that more so into the 4th round, he's going to be a 3 technique. He'll be able to come in and compete with Milton Williams and Fletcher Cox. Because I just think if you're thinking about the longevity of the defensive tackle spot for the Philadelphia Eagles, Fletcher Cox is probably on a 1 year. You got Milton Williams on his rookie contract, but if Fletch leaves going into 2024, you're going to need someone else behind Milton Williams to contribute. And that's where you can get guys 4th, 5th, 6th round right now. And this year, that will be more of a bigger contributor to 2024 Eagles than they would be 2023. And I feel like Zach Pickens could fill that role. I like getting the former high recruit that's going to be able to get into a professional environment and maybe, a professional NFL level staff can get the best out of them. So Zach Pickens very much fills in that role. But I think my favorite value, 3 technique pass rusher. Because, I mean, if you're talking about day 3 run stuffers, it is what it is. You can probably get the similar level play from like a UDFA. Guy that I don't think enough people are talking about here. And I mean, you're sleeping on him on the Raz side because the Raz, he's listed as a defensive end. But he'd be a 3 technique in the NFL. Jalen Redmond, 7.85 Raz. You're going, oh, that's a defensive end. We're going to move to D-tackle, and you'll start to see a little bit more optimism here. But he's a guy that was really, really good. 2019 for Oklahoma, 11 TFLs, 6.5 sacks. 2022, 10 TFLs, 4 sacks. Tested really well. I just think this is the rotational 3 technique that Philadelphia should get. Because watch this. We're going to move into defensive tackle. And why not? He's same Pickens, Tahj Adabaware. All these guys are going to be D tackles. Why not him? Look when he switched to the D tackle. 9.72 Raz. He is projected to go 5th, 6th round right now. This is my value defensive tackle that I want for the Philadelphia Eagles. Athletically speaking, fits the parameters that we want based off of the Milton Williams selection. We want these athletes at 3 technique. It's exactly what it is. The value is going to be there if he's there into day 3. This is a name. If it's not Jalen Carter, I want a Jalen at D tackle. We all know Philly likes to hoard their Jalens. Jalen Carter at 10. Maybe even trade up to get Jalen Carter. If not, wait till day 3. Jalen Redmond out of Oklahoma comes in and it fills that 3 technique. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about the defensive tackles in this year's draft class. Is there one in particular that you really want? Did we highlight anybody here that you want the Eagles to stay clear of and avoid for this upcoming draft? Let me know in the comment section below. Hopefully tomorrow, if not Monday, we'll be back with an edge rusher ranking. I mean, it's a little bit different for Philadelphia because we have 2 edge rushing roles. We have our defensive ends, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. We also have our pass rush linebacker and Hassan Riddick. So there's going to be a couple different stylistic players that we're going to be talking about in that video, but it'll be out before too long. We're definitely on track to finish all the breakdowns because we got edge, we got linebacker, we got corner, we got safety. Even could do special. I probably won't do special teams, but I do think Philadelphia should probably consider a punter at some point during this draft. But we'll get that one out to you guys hopefully tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching. If it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next one, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Have a good one.